Welcome to UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center's second video tutorial on the greenhouse gas abatement cost model, also known as the GACMO tool. This second tutorial focuses on the new GACMO interface in Excel. The development of this new version of GACMO has been supported by the Initiative for Climate Action Transparency, ICAT. In this video, I will go through the main spreadsheets, main steps and the tables to be filled by the users in the GACMO tool. This sheet introduction is the first page of the GACMO and first spreadsheet in the GACMO tool. In this spreadsheet, basic information about the GACMO tool is provided. To continue to navigate in the GACMO tool, the user must click on Continue button on the right top of the screen. The second spreadsheet in the GACMO tool is called Guidance. Here, the user will be able to read a step-by-step guidance for using the GACMO. If the user has no experience with GACMO yet, we recommend the user to read the introduction and the guidance sheet carefully before starting using the tool. By clicking on the titles in blue, the text will expand with a brief description of the content of each step. Clicking on the green button called PDF Guidance, user will be able to download the guidance document in PDF format. To navigate further in the GACMO tool, click on Start GACMO button. After clicking Start GACMO button, GACMO will open the first step of the tool called Assumptions. In the Assumptions spreadsheet, the user has to provide basic country information, such as country name, start year, which is the year of the latest GG inventory, currency, exchange rate, discount rate, energy prices, calorific values of fuels, electricity prices, grid emission factor, global warming potentials, data on population and GDP for the start year. The information provided in this sheet will be used by GACMO for estimating GHG emissions as well as estimating mitigation potential and costs. Please note that the user must fill in the data in the cells highlighted in yellow. The values found in the cells highlighted in white should not be modified by the user, as they are results of automatic calculations done by GACMO. To proceed to the next step, click on Go to Step 2, Energy Balance button on the right top of the screen. The second step of the GACMO tool is the sheet called Start Year Energy Balance. This sheet includes energy production and consumption data for the start year. This sheet must be filled in by the user. To start, click on Select the Unit for Energy Balance button. It is possible to insert energy balance either in energy units or in physical units. After selecting one of the units, click Select. In the example provided here, the user can input the data on energy balance in terajoules in the cells highlighted in yellow. The second table below is the electricity balance. Data on electricity is provided in gigawatt hours. On the left-hand side is the table with electricity consumption by sector. On the right-hand side is the table with electricity production by power plants in gigawatt hours. Values in the cells in yellow must be provided by the user. The values in other cells are estimated by GACMO with formulas. The user can also change the units for energy balance by clicking on this brown button called Change Unit for Input. Clicking on the button Show Table in kilotons of oil equivalent, the user will be able to view energy balance in kilotons of oil equivalent. This table is automatically calculated from the energy balance in terajoule provided above. After providing all energy balance data needed in this sheet, the user can proceed to the following step by clicking on the button Go to Step 3, GHG Balance. This sheet corresponds to the third step in the GACMO tool. In this step, the user can view the greenhouse gas emissions for the start year. The first table shows estimated CO2 emissions for the fuel combustion sectors in the start year. This table doesn't have yellow cells. It means that the values are automatically estimated by the GACMO tool based on the energy balance from the start year provided in the previous step. Note that for obtaining those estimates in this table, the user must have provided the emission factors in the first step, called assumptions. The second table below shows the summary of GHG emissions for all sectors. The sectoral classification in this table aligns with the common reporting table of GHG inventory submissions. CO2 emissions from fuel combustion are estimated by GACMO automatically, so no changes are needed in this cell D43. The user must provide data on GHG emissions for non-combustion sectors and non-CO2 emissions from fuel combustion. The data should be filled in using GHG emissions inventory for the start year. Data should be provided for three gases, CO2, CH4, and N2O in kilotons of CO2 equivalent. Therefore, the GHG emissions inventory for the start year is essential input data for constructing the GACMO for the country. After inserting the data from the GHG inventory in this second table, the user can check total GHG emissions, including and excluding LULUCF in the start year, in the cells G67 and G68 in blue. When the user is done with this sheet, proceed with the following step by clicking on the button Go to Step 4, Growth Factors. Step 4 in the GACMO tool corresponds to the sheet called Growth. This spreadsheet includes one table with the expected annual % growth rate of emissions and energy consumption for the different sectors for the future projected years, from the start year until 2050. These growth rates are used by the GACMO as drivers for estimating energy balance and emissions for the projected years for the business as usual scenario. This table must be filled in by the user. We recommend the user to insert different values of growth rates for the different sectors, as fuel combustion sectors, agriculture, forestry, waste may have different expected developments in the future. The sectors may also have different growth rates because of the structural changes in the economy. For example, transport growth rate may have a higher expected growth rate compared to the industry sector, or vice versa. These values of the growth rates can be obtained in different ways. For example, by using economic models that estimate economic activity growth in the various sectors. If such economic models are not available, then other studies can be reviewed to search for the projected developments in the various sectors of the economy. If such data are not available from other studies, a simplified approach would be to estimate historical growth rates for the recent years. Annual growth rates are provided by the user in the columns D to G, and % increase relative to the start year will be estimated by the tool automatically in the columns H to K. It is important to note that these growth rates are essential inputs as they are used by the tool for estimating BAU projections, assuming that no mitigation actions are in place. Once all the data in the growth sheet have been included, the user can click on Go to Step 5 BAU Energy Balances button. This sheet corresponds to the fifth step in the GACMO tool. In this step 5, the user can view the projected energy balances for the business as usual scenario for projected years. The user needs to select the year of the energy balance by clicking on the corresponding buttons 2025, 2030, 2035, or 2050. For example, if the user clicks on the button 2030, the GACMO tool will show the values of the energy balance in the business as usual scenario for 2030. The user can change the units of the energy balance by clicking on one of those two green buttons, terajoules or kilotons of oil equivalent. The data in this sheet are automatically estimated by GACMO. It means that the user shouldn't modify any data in these tables. The first table is thus an energy balance for the selected year. The second table below is an electricity balance. This table depicts electricity consumption by sectors on the left-hand side and electricity production by power plants on the right-hand side. These projected energy balances for the different years of the business as usual scenario are estimated based on the energy balance in the start year and growth rates provided in the previous step. If it is necessary, the user can go back to the steps 1 to 4 and modify the input data. If the results are correct, then the user can proceed to the following step by clicking on Go to Next Step 6 button on the top right. This sheet corresponds to the sixth step in the GACMO tool. In the step 6, the user can view the greenhouse gas emissions for the projected years in the business as usual scenario. The user should not modify any data in these tables as the values of GHG emissions in the business as usual scenario are estimated by the GACMO automatically. Similarly as in the previous spreadsheet, the user can navigate throughout the years by clicking on the buttons 2025, 2030, 2035, 2040, 2045, and 2050. The first table shows CO2 emissions from fuel combustion. This table includes projected GHG emissions by fuel and by sector, following the same structure as energy balance table. The CO2 emissions from fuel combustion are estimated based on the energy balance, emission factors, and the growth rates. The second table presents summary of all emissions from all sectors, including fugitive emissions, emissions from non-energy sectors, and non-CO2 emissions from fuel combustion. In the final rows, 68 and 69, the user can view the total GHG emissions with and without LULUCF projected for the business as usual scenario in the selected year. The user can go back to steps 1 and 4 and modify the input data or go to the next step, step 7, mitigation options. This sheet corresponds to the seventh step in the GACMO tool. In this step 7, the user can build the mitigation scenario. It is thus an important step in the GACMO tool. The table now on the screen is the table with all mitigation options available in the GACMO. The mitigation scenario is built in GACMO by selecting the set of mitigation options relevant to the national context of the user's country, and by scaling those options in the projected years. For example, the user could indicate 1 megawatt of solar PV or 1000 megawatt of solar PV. It is for the user to decide and play with the scale of each mitigation option. There are 119 predefined mitigation options. Those options are aggregated into types. For example, landfills, hydro, marine, methane avoidance, N2O, solar, etc. Like previously, only the cells highlighted in yellow should be modified by the user. The user can thus modify only the cells located in the column I. In this column, the user must insert the number of units penetrating in certain years for each relevant mitigation option. It has to be noted that the value inserted in the column I must consider the units of each mitigation action defined in the column E. For example, let's consider the case of efficient lighting with LEDs. In the column E, the unit for this mitigation option is 1000 bulbs. Considering that the unit is 1000 bulbs, if we want to introduce 10,000 efficient light bulbs, we need to insert the value 10 in the column I. It is thus important to be careful when inserting the scale of the mitigation options and be mindful of the units. In this table, the user will find the costs and emission parameters for each mitigation option. The abatement costs in US dollar per ton of CO2 emission reduced for each mitigation option are depicted in the column D. The scale of mitigation options should be relative to the start year, excluding mitigation options implemented in the start year and before the start year. As an example, introducing 1000 megawatt of solar PV in 2025 table would mean 1000 megawatt of new solar PV capacity in 2025 relative to the start year, excluding installed capacity in the start year and before the start year. Similarly, in 2030 and other projected years, the scale of the mitigation options should be relative to the start year. The user can navigate throughout the years by clicking on these buttons in blue and insert units of the relevant mitigation options in each one of the projected years. As an example, if the number of units operational for one mitigation option specified in 2025 is the same in 2030, then the user must copy the unit of this mitigation option from 2025 to 2030. The magnitude of the mitigation option can of course vary across the projected years. Usually, the scale of the mitigation options will increase in the future years with an increase in the ambition. If the user clicks on the button Select Reduction Option Sector Type, it is possible to select one of the several types of mitigation option to be able to view the mitigation options belonging only to this type selected. For each one of the mitigation options, there is a corresponding technology table. The user can check the technology table corresponding to a mitigation option by clicking on the title of this mitigation option in blue. In the technology sheet, the user can view the main assumptions and formulas behind the estimation of the emission reduction and the costs for this mitigation option. For example, the user can find the number of hours of solar installation in the case of solar PV option, or the user can find the number of hours of usage of lighting in the case of efficient lighting. We recommend the user to carefully review all the parameters marked in yellow and adjust them to the country-specific context. To return to the mitigation option sheet, the user can click on Return to Mitigation Options sheet. At the bottom of this table, the user can view the percentage reduction for all mitigation options compared to the business as usual scenario in the selected year. Finally, the second table below shows GHG emissions by sectors in the BAU scenario and total reduction from the selected mitigation options. After filling in this table for all the years considered, the user can go to the next step and analyze the results of the GACMO by clicking on this button, Go to Step 8, Results Sheet. The step 8 in the GACMO tool corresponds to the results sheet. This sheet summarizes all the results of the GACMO tool for the BAU scenario and the mitigation scenario based on the input parameters provided in the previous step. The first table shows total GHG emissions in the BAU scenario and in the mitigation scenario, as well as emission reduction in the mitigation scenario compared to the business as usual scenario. Second table shows GHG emissions per capita and carbon intensity of the economy for the business as usual scenario. The third table below presents sectoral split of the GHG emissions for the BAU scenario. The fourth table depicts the sectoral split of emissions for the mitigation scenario. The fifth table shows the emission reduction by sectors. And the final table with the results depicts emissions by three gases: CO2, CH4, and N2O, including and excluding LULUCF, in kilotons of CO2 equivalent. And on the right side of these tables, you can view the results in the graphical format: projections with and without LULUCF, projections at the level of 5 sectors, and at the level of 11 subsectors. Also below, users can view marginal abatement revenue curve. It is constructed based on the mitigation options provided in the previous steps. If it's necessary to update the marginal abatement revenue curve, the user needs to go back to step 7, modify the data, and click on the button Adjust Mark Curve. By clicking this button, the graphs on the marginal abatement revenue curve will be updated based on the mitigation option values provided. How do we interpret mark curve? The mitigation options located on the positive side of the y-axis are those that bring more revenues than the costs, while the mitigation options located on the negative side of the y-axis are those that have higher cost than the revenues. The widths of the x-axis correspond to the emission reduction. Mitigation options having higher values on the x-axis bring the most emission reduction. The user can view marginal abatement revenue curve for 2025, 2030, 2035, and 2050. It might be the case that after visualizing the results, the user would like to change the input parameters in a certain scenario or a year. To do this, click the button Go back to step 1 to 4. Next step is step 9, Results in BTR format. The results from the GACMO tool can be used as inputs for the Biennial Transparency Report (BTR), in particular for Common Tabular Format (CTF). GACMO automatically converts all the results from the previous step into the results BTR sheet. This spreadsheet includes two CTF tables of the BTR,
information on projection of emissions under with measure scenario, information on projections of emissions under without measure scenario. CTF Table 8, information on projections under with additional measure scenario, is included in step 9, but it's not automatically estimated by GACMO. The tool can generate one business as usual scenario and one mitigation scenario within a single file. If needed, a second mitigation scenario can be added by creating an additional GACMO file. Copy the results for the third with additional measure scenario into the third table below. If the results are fine and user would like to use GACMO tool for tracking purposes, then the user can proceed to the last step by clicking on the Go to Step 10 button.
The final sheet in the GACMO tool is called Tracking Progress. In this sheet, the user can monitor the progress made in implementing each mitigation action. This table presents the same 119 mitigation options available in the Step 7 mitigation options. The user provides the actual amount of implemented units for each mitigation option in the columns J to Y. The GACMO will then estimate the accumulated number of units of the mitigation options over the implementation period in the column Z. In the column AA, the GACMO tool will estimate the achieved progress towards 2030 in % by comparing the planned amount of mitigation options in 2030 with the achieved amount of mitigation options in 2030. Finally, in the column AB, the GACMO calculates the accumulated GHG emission reduction for the implementation period measured in kilotons of CO2 equivalent per year. We have now finished our journey through the GACMO tool. We hope that this video has been useful. The GACMO tool can be downloaded on the UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center's website. The link can be found in the video description. Thank you for following the GACMO tutorial.